will be legally accountable in that country? So they told that even it is a cloud-based software, even if it is not sold in the CD, even if you install it in your PC, there has to be a legal distributor in Singapore. That is a requirement. Okay. So similarly, we have strange requirements across different geographies. So harmonizing between countries it is extremely difficult. But there are some things which are harmonized. Okay. For instance, I was speaking about QMS, right? Quality management systems. Okay. So usually medical device regulations say that you need to have a ISO 13485, or you need to have something called as a medical device single audit program. Like that, they don't specify. But since ISO 13485 is the most widely used standard for medical device companies, they usually have. Okay, so in India, ISO 13485 it is accepted worldwide. But what happens is there are some geography-specific requirements. Okay, when it comes to TGA, they also accept 13485. But in addition to that, TGA, based on TGA regulations, they want to have specific clauses that needs to be fulfilled. Okay, so in those cases, what they do is they have something called as a medical device single audit program, which means that okay, so basic clauses you are covered, but based on the geography. For instance, Brazil, they have their own set of requirements that will become covered under MedSAP. We call it as medical device single audit. For instance, Japan, they have a certain set of regulations that will be covered. Okay, for have already discussed. So when you want to market a medical device, you have to have certain basic requirements in the form of a dossier and performance reports. Okay. For instance, there is a device that comes in contact with the human body. Okay. So depending upon the duration of the contact, you need to duration of the contact and nature of the contact, you need to have performance tests. Okay. For instance, if it is a surface device, for example, in the case of a toothbrush, okay, so you have to see here. Category either come in contact with the skin or the mucosal membrane. Okay, so now I will take this as the mucosal membrane. Okay, so then when it comes to duration of contact, it is limited contact. I understand that nobody is going to brush for 24 hours, maybe 5 to 10 minutes. So it could come under the category of A limited. So you have to come here. When it comes to A limited, you have to do performance tests like cytotoxicity, skin sensitivity, and irritation or intracutaneous reactivity. So these three are the performance tests that you need to perform in order to prove that your medical device is safe for human use. Okay. So similarly, if it is an externally communicating device, for instance, you have an implant. For instance, if there is a screw, then you need to have a screwdriver for fixing that implant, right? So those are all called as externally communicating devices. Okay. Then again, depending upon the contact and duration of the contact, the number of tests that you need to perform, it will vary. Okay. Then, when it comes to the implant device, your actual implants, depending upon the duration of the contact, the performance tests vary. Okay. Then, I have a question here. So these implants are made from specific raw materials, right? So whether you need to perform these tests on the raw material or the final finished product.
Raw material.
So there is a raw material. It will undergo a number of manufacturing processes, right? For instance, anodization. So some metallic implants they undergo anodization. So this anodization they will cause changes in the material characteristics. The health authority will not accept the fact that I have did all the tests on the raw material. They will not. They will never accept.
Actually, when we go into sometimes find some what do you call it, a toxic substance in it. Like that's a
That's
metal.
what you are. That's why you need to perform performance tests.
They are doing it in a final stage. If we do it before in the raw material, so they can do it.
Manufacturing process will alter the characteristics of the material.
So one day on that means இவரா பண்ணது ஃபைனலா பண்ணதுமே போத் போத் பண்ணலாம்.
both பண்ணணுன்ற அவசியம் கிடையாது.
So
Right.
the raw material you
For
are not
example,
directly going to use it on the patient, right? Then what is the purpose of doing the performance
so if
test?
you are, for example, if you are going to use medical silicone, it is already be tested and evaluated. So you are buying that medical silicone, and there is no
Yes.
need to do.
So you are choosing that material based on the fact that it is compatible with the human body, right? See, if I'm using a titanium implant, it has to be medical grade titanium. Okay? I'm not using what I can say. For instance, I'm not going to use the stainless steel that is available in my home to make that implant, right? So when you use a material during the manufacturing process, developmental toxicity degradation. See, when it comes to reproductive and developmental I'm not sure why. Maybe it might be come under the different category. They do a test called as extractables and leachables. Okay, so they get them implant and they do some sort of chemical studies in order to check if these substances, when placed inside the human body under biological conditions, whether they uh, have a tendency to give some other emit some other substances. Okay. So this I am not sure. So, so for every biological effect, they have a separate standard. As you see from here, so 10993 dash 05. They have cytotoxic assay. So there they have a brief detailed description of how to do those performance tests. Okay. So the basic standard is ISO 10993 part 01. That is the basic standard where you will find information like this. These other standards like 10, 23, 11, 0306, they give more information. Okay. So this is all about biochem.
If there's a continuation, maybe that's why the last two things were included.
Where this one?
Surface device, implant device, and maybe there's one more, which would include those two columns.
Here? Oh, I don't.
Actually, those tests are based on the application, like the products that we are going to use. So based on those products, those
See,
those
let's
tests will be
go
made.
back to the same. So this is from the standard. So it is the type of device, nature of contact with the human body, duration of contact with the human body. Okay. The same thing will be here. Duration of contact, nature of contact. So in nature of contact, it will be something like implants, the orthopedic, all the implants will come under the category maker. When it comes to surface device, something like ECG electrodes that you place on the surface of the skin, they will come under the category of surface devices. Okay. Then there is some standard called as IEC 60601 series of standards. Okay. So here you have two basic standards. One is 60601-1-1. Okay. So this gives a basic introduction of what are all the perform for a specific device. First one. Then there is some standard called as IEC 60601-1-2. That is for electromagnetic compatibility. Okay. So this IEC 60601-1 and -1-2, it is mandatory for most. So they have a set of common performance tests that need to be performed for all devices, including your smartwatch, pulse oximeter. Okay. Then there are some standards, for instance, say -2, -4, -2, -24. These are called as product specific standards. Okay. So if it is something like an infusion pump, it is a mandatory requirement that they should be in compliance with this standard. If it is a defibrillator and defibrillator monitors, then they have to be in compliance with 60601-2-4. So these are called as product specific standards. Similarly, for MRIs, X-ray machines, you have different numbers. Okay. In case of some untoward incident, you need to follow this standard -1-8. Okay. So this is all. I'm not going in depth into electrical safety because it will take a lot of time. Okay. So if you are using a electrical or electronic medical device, these two things are mandatory. -1, -2.
Even electrical toothbrush will come under this.
Yes. Then again, you have to follow this standard. -1-11. Home healthcare, right? If there is a pulse oximeter that is used at homes, then you need to follow this product specific standard. Then, so I'll make a pause here again. So until this point, you have any doubt? Okay, then there is something called as risk management. Okay. So whatever the medical device you develop, that always comes with risks. Okay, so you have to evaluate for each and every medical device. You have to evaluate first what is the hazard, what could be the potential problems that could be associated with the medical device. Okay. So, for instance, I'm having a medical device that needs to create an alarm if the value exceeds a specified limit. Okay. In the risk management file, you need to document what would be the risk control measure if it doesn't create an alarm. So let us consider a simple case of an insulin pump. So okay, so the function of an insulin pump is to give insulin at specified intervals. Okay, so here you can consider two scenarios, simple two scenarios. What will happen if the insulin pump does not give the required storage, the required dosage? What will happen if the battery fails? So all these type of risks, hazards, mitigation measures, they need to be documented in the form of a report called as risk management report, and you have a separate standard for that. This ISO 14971. So all the risks, risk control measures, harm, sources of harm, remedial measures, mitigation measures, they have to be documented in the form of a report or a dossier called as a risk management report. Okay. So then there is something called as usability engineering. Okay. So whenever there is a medical device, there is always something called as a user manual. Okay. So there is an instruction in the user manual that says that I always needs to use a 5-volt battery for the normal operation of the instrument. But there will be always people who will say that why it is 5 volts, why not 10 volts? If it is a medical device and if there is a specification that you need to use only a 5-volt battery for the normal operation, the device will work under normal conditions. Okay, but some people தமிழ்ல கிருத்திரம் பிடிச்சவங்கன்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. 3 வோல்ட் 5 வோல்ட் பேட்டரியை போடுறதுக்கு பதிலா நான் 10 வோல்ட் பேட்டரியை போட்டா என்ன ஆகும்? There will be always some implications. This is just an example. Okay, all those things are studied in the case of usability under abnormal conditions of use. So this is also one of the mandatory requirements. Okay, so whenever you develop a medical device, you need to have, if it is an implant, you need to have biocompatibility. If it is a electrical device, you need to have electrical safety reports. Third, usability and risk management. This is common for, this is a general requirement for all the medical devices. Okay, so apart from that, if you are using software as a medical device, okay, so I know like there are some apps where you can measure your tissue oxygenation levels. Like, can you give a mobile? So there are some apps that utilizes the camera. In couple of years back, there was like only one camera, and there are some apps where you can just put your finger here and you can measure the pulse oxygenation levels. Okay, whether that will be considered as a medical device. That will not come under the category of medical devices, but still you have to follow some standard called as IEC 62304, medical device software. Okay. So you have to fulfill those requirements based on that software. Okay. Then I told that there were a lot of issues coming for the interconnected medical devices. Okay. So there has to be specific requirements related to cyber security. So there are some standards. It's like IEC 80,001, some standards are there. So you have to do all the, if I remember well, there is something called as penetration test. Not a cybersecurity expert.
You would have firewall and simulated.
Yes, something related to hacking. So those type of tests also needs to be performed if it is a interconnected medical device. So depending upon the nature of the, and for instance, if you see, recently there are a lot of devices based on augmented reality and virtual reality. When I checked in the FDA website last time, there were only around, say, double digits. I'm not sure if it is 50 or 60, only 50 or 60 medical devices based on AR and VR were approved by FDA. Okay. When you are having some devices like this based on VR and AR, then personalized medicine, most of the times we don't have regulations or standards for it because these are all evolving technologies. So in those cases, what you need to do is, if you want to market those devices in FDA, you need to connect with FDA through some meetings called as Q-sub meetings. Okay. So what you do is you have to go to FDA, arrange for a meeting, and you have to check with them. See, guys, I'm having some sort of a device like this, and we are since the regulations are not clear, we have did this type of performance tests. So what is your opinion? This is just these type of interactions with the FDA are all for free. So usually what they do is, if it is a new technology, they always go for these pre-sub and Q-sub. Okay. Then when it comes to FDA, there are three regulatory pathways. One is 510K for class certain, class 1, and all the other class 2 medical devices. When it comes to class 3, it is pre-market approval, PMA. Okay. Then there is something called as de novo. When the technology is new and the similar or predicate devices are not available. I'll tell you a scenario. We had one client. They were using Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction to generate heat. Okay, and they were using that technology for. Okay. But uh, the problem with bone cements, there is something related to microbial contamination. Okay, so you have to do one more surgery to remove the bone cement. Okay, and the currently only available technology for the removal of bone cement is using ultrasound. But they were trying to use this Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction for the removal of bone cement. Okay. For that, we were unable to find any similar device. And the technology itself was new because they had a patent for it. With this information, they told that they asked us if you could. They didn't give, due to intellectual property issues, they didn't give full details about the product. What we suggested was you better go and ask FP through Q subs and pre-sub mean. That because the technology is new, we don't know what could be the performance test that needs to be performed on the device. The only two performance tests what we know was IEC 60601-1 and -2 electromagnetic compatibility and general electrical safety for everything. For the other, they asked what could be the other performance test because you are not even disclosing the technology that you are using. Then how can we recommend? What we did was we did some sort of a due diligence report and asked them to contact FDA for that. Okay. Similarly, there was one technology called as CRISPR. It is an IVD based device. They were using this technology for the detection of COVID during that COVID time. Then, in addition to that, they were using this technology for treatment of sickle disease. Not sure about the name of the disease. Sickle and it's a in vitro diagnostic. But they were using the same technology for the detection of human papilloma virus, malaria. It is possible. They had a patent for it. Again, we told that there were some basic tests for IVD-based devices. Again, we referred them back to FDA. Please had meetings with the FDA to because it's a new technology, right? Even we are not aware of it. And they were using this for diagnosis. But there was one device which had FDA approval, but that is for the treatment of sickle anemia. Okay. So likewise, those devices which don't have a similar device, that they will come under the category of called as HD, humanitarian device exemption. Okay, so there could be a specific category of devices where the occurrence is very low.
I don't think there's anything that does not.
So there are certain diseases where the occurrence is like that will occur for 1 in million. If you want to treat those type of very rare diseases, then this humanitarian device exemption comes into. Okay. Then if I have developed a medical device in India, but I want to do some sort of clinical trials back in the US. like what I told, no, what happened for that implant manufacturer in the US and Japan. Because of certain anatomical and pathological reasons, the results could be different. For instance, when I was doing my clinical training abroad, people were developing some sort of optics-based devices for the detection of skin cancers. Okay, that could probably work well in the European Union. But when it comes to Africa and South Asian people, that technology might not work. What could be the reason?
Because skin color is naturally dark.
Skin color is different. Melanin content is going to be different. Okay. When it comes to those sort of issues, requirements are a bit different. Okay. Then I'll stop here. Just stop. So any country you go, you need to have a quality management system which states that starting from the purchase of the raw material to the final finished product, marketing your device, then dismantling of your device, you have established a specific protocol. You need to have QMS. Okay. Then you need to have a specific intended use and indications for use for the device. Second one we are done. Then you need to have a similar or a predicate device which is approved in that specific country where you want to market your device. Okay. Then you have to do performance tests in order to prove the safety and effectiveness of your device. Okay. So when it comes to performance characteristics, what I could say, if you are using a implant which is a screw, okay, then there are some specific standards where you measure the axial pull-out strength, torsional strength, depending upon the nature of the implant. Okay, so you need to have performance reports in order to prove the safety and effectiveness of your device. Okay, then there are some other standards. Sterilization. If your device is sterile, then you need to do either it has to be gamma sterilized or ETO sterilized. Probably in some cases, if you are using ETO sterilization, some residuals will be there. In order to check those residuals, you need to do again performance tests. Okay. Then when you are labeling is also required. If it is fragile, then you have to have a symbol that it is fragile. If it has to be used under specific conditions, then you have to mention the temperature range. So those things will come under labeling requirements. So once the final device is packaged, you have to do transport tests.
During transport, no harm.
No, your device is not damaged. So you have some standards based on IAT, like I don't remember the number of the standards very well, but there are some tests where you have the entire package, and this package is simulated on a condition like it is traveling by train. So by traveling by train, there will be vibrations, right? So they will simulate the vibrations and they make sure that because of that vibrations, your medical device is not damaged. Okay. Then on the box, they put it in water for shipment, so that that barrier is not breached. So likewise, depending upon the nature of the medical device performed, so QMS, intended use, indications for use, similar for the predicate device, then performance tests, labeling, usability, risk management. Then if you are using software as a medical using software in your device, IEC 62304. Then if it is an interconnected medical device, for instance, even if you are able to connect a pen drive to your system, you need to do all the cybersecurity tests. So with all these test reports, you submit it to the health authority and they will review it. And if there are any queries, they will ask you. If they are satisfied with those, with your answers, they will give you the final approval. But it is always a mandatory requirement that you need to have a similar or a predicate device in that country. Then there are some other legal documents like declaration of conformity, where you list all the standards that you have followed to prove the safety and effectiveness of your medical device. Then there is something called as in US it is called as a certificate of foreign government, which means see, I am a researcher here in India, and if I want to market my medical device in the US, they will ask a question: why you don't have approval for your medical device in your home country? Why you want to market it? That is something called as a certificate of foreign government, which means that the government in the home country will certify that yes, these devices are approved for sale in the home country. You have to attach that certificate also. So these are some basic requirements for registration or approval of medical devices around the world. In China, they have a bit of a strange requirement. We call it as inventory testing. For instance, I told you right, IEC 60601-1.
That's true.
So -1 -2, for instance. Okay. Worldwide, they will have a one standard, which might have come in 2019. What happens in China is they have their own system of standards, which will be more or less aligned with the harmon the universally accepted standard, but there will be some deviations, which means that they will be using the older version. If I the new version of the standard is say 2019, in China they will be following say 2016 or 2012, and all these standards are in Chinese. So the health authority insists that you need to perform those safety and performance tests in a lab that is located in China. So if you are a manufacturer of MRI, so those are all universal standards, but those governments make it mandatory that they test it in an approved lab in that specific country by their government. Okay. So this is just a short summary of medical device regulation. So if you have any questions,
same so better.
So that's why like cyber security regulations are there. So in Singapore, we help the client to market the device, but there were a lot. It was also a software as a medical device, which is downloaded from the internet and it can be used. But there were a lot of queries related to cyber security. So at one point of time, the client felt that they were asking the proprietary information. So they told that if we are supposed to give this, even with FDA and European Union CE marking, we didn't disclose this much of information. If the health authority wants to know, they told that we will withdraw the application and we don't want to sell the products in Sun.
In that point of view, it's okay.
But at the end of the day, it is the regulations that because that was also the time when the cyber security regulations in Singapore were evolving.
So suppose if you like to go for the medical world, very strong on the cybersecurity potential.
If it is an interconnected medical device,
Say for say if the product is being without internet facility or internet.
yeah, I'm not sure how to answer the question. See, if it is there is an insulin pump, then obviously there has to be some connection, right?
From, yes, fine.
Just because I'm having an added advantage with my device that can be accessed remotely.
Yes.
So you need to have some sort of tests to prove that your device is safe.
More effort.
Yes. Dick Cheney's case was entirely different. Okay, then I'll stop. Thank you very much for your time.